Okay, we are in Kekawaka Creek, which is part of the place that my dad lives. So he actually lives in the Kekawaka Creek Basin. And it's a small creek. It obviously is much higher in winter time. There's ephemeral creeks. They have these pulses in the winter. And so you can see there's some native trout in there, maybe. I don't know if you can see them. They're not very big, but when the fire came through, the creek's elevation rose quite a bit, but that's because of the lack of evapotranspiration. Suddenly all of the trees, the majority of the trees in this watershed were burned. Holy buckets, there's mosquitoes here. Anyways, and so when the trees are no longer pulling water and losing it through evapotranspiration, you get a pulse in a lot of these watersheds. And the other thing that's interesting is that these are alders, these big trees here. They're called they're red alder, and that's our creek. Instead of saying maybe having ash, we have alders out west along the creeks, at least in California, Oregon, and Washington. And they're pretty big, but they have the ability to sprout out of the crotches of their limbs, and basically like this one here is regenerating out of the crotches of the limbs. Oh my god, mosquitoes are bad. The others you can see up here, these guys are regenerating. The outer branch is scorched, so they died, but the tree themselves will come back. They didn't burn hot enough at the bases here to kill the bark. Obviously some of them did, like these here. They may basal sprout, but most likely not. Alders aren't necessarily basal sprouters, the root collar sprouters after a fire. They're more of an avoider. They don't typically do well with fire, and it doesn't necessarily to advantage them. You're typically getting around these riparian areas, and so they are not generally burning, right? So these areas are typically wet. So again, here's the creek bottom, Kekawaka Creek, and beautiful area. But again, this is kind of the heart of that August complex, and it ripped through where my dad lived. And you can see up higher here, that had a higher fire severity, and so that killed a lot of the trees, and we'll see that in a little bit. We'll look at some ground fire. But around here is mostly scorching. You can see these alders have thin bark. Again, not much insulation against fire. Himalayan blackberries are still here. There's even some old canes previously. Shows you how much it burned. But a lot of the organic matter, etc., has been burned from this area here. All right.